Yo, what's going on everyone? My name is Rutto, and today I'm going to be talking about something that I find very interesting, and it's also something that's very important for the Fortnite community, and I don't think is talked about a lot, so let's get right into it. So many people see the Fortnite community as a positive space with some of the best and most entertaining content creators on Twitch and YouTube. And this is very true, as many of the biggest creators in the community are excellent entertainers and role models, and we have seen many instances of the community coming together to support those who are going through a difficult time in their life. With all this being said, however, the professional side of Fortnite is a totally different story. Fortnite pros seem to always be at odds with one another, whether it's arguing over aim assist, complaining about Epic and their lack of awareness as to what the community wants, or simply starting beef on Twitter because someone killed them. The professional Fortnite community can be quite toxic at times. As a fan of professional esports and specifically competitive Fortnite, I've watched almost every single event or tournament from the very beginning. I've seen the professional side of Fortnite shift from a positive and friendly community to one that is far more toxic and disruptive. So I wanted to explain why I believe this shift has occurred, and I will be comparing professional Fortnite to pro Call of Duty, as they are both popular in North America and EU. They have similar demographics, and Call of Duty is like the only other esports I've ever watched, so it's the only thing I have to compare it to. So my first and the most obvious reason as to why the Fortnite community has become so toxic is simply down to the average age of players being very young. Unlike Call of Duty or many other mainstream esports where the minimum age to be a pro player is 18, Fortnite has even recently reduced the minimum age from 16 to 13 years old. Because of this, many of the top Fortnite players in the world are very young and range between 14 to 18 years old. Obvious examples of this are Mongrel and Mr. Savage, who are considered to be some of the best Fortnite players in the world, and they're like 14 or 15 years old, which is insane. So doing a little bit of research for this video, I did find an article by Fortnite Intel. The article will be linked down below, and basically they did the math and found that the average age of players who qualified for the Fortnite World Cup in solos was only 17 years old, with the youngest players being 13. This means that many of the players who qualified wouldn't be allowed to participate in a lot of other mainstream esports communities because they'd be too young. Now, I know a lot of you are thinking, well, what's wrong with being young and being a professional Fortnite player? And there really isn't anything wrong with that. Younger players are still some of the most skilled Fortnite players in the world, and young content creators are some of the most entertaining to watch on Twitch and YouTube. However, with the professional Fortnite community being so young, there is a clear lack of maturity, which in turn has caused the toxicity levels to rise within the community. Now, I'm not suggesting this is anyone's fault for being young, but a 16-year-old is going to lack the life experience of someone who is 20, 25, or 30. There is nothing wrong with being immature when you're 16. I'm 20 now, and when I look back at myself when I was 16, I was a piece of shit. And this is typical. Most people who look back at their teen years think they're a piece of shit. But this doesn't mean that these high immaturity levels aren't a factor to increased levels of toxicity, because they clearly are. I find that when people are younger, they tend to not take criticism very well, and they see someone disagreeing with them as an attack rather than just someone debating or giving their own opinion. Because of this, toxicity levels increase as players often retaliate when someone says something they don't like or disagrees with them. Obviously, the biggest example of this within the community is arguments over aim assist in Fortnite. Massive Twitter beefs have started over minor disagreements or just someone saying their opinion on the topic. I mean, a recent example that a lot of you might know was the Twitter beef between Issa, Provoked, and Vorwin, 3 players who were all on professional orgs. Issa, one of the best controller players in the world, posted a clip on Twitter of him absolutely destroying kids without aim assist. And the whole point of it was to show that obviously you need to have amazing aim on controller to be a top tier player. You're not just relying on aim assist. Now, unlike most of the community who just memed on him, joked around, didn't take it too seriously, Provoked and Vorwin decided to start a full-on Twitter beef for literally no reason. They literally made it seem like they felt attacked because Issa posted this clip, and it was extremely unnecessary. It's instances and immature actions like this that create such toxicity within the community. Obviously, another example of young players being toxic to one another was the whole Clix versus Zexro 1v1 situation. Now, personally, I think the banter between Clix and Zexro wasn't a big deal. The problem occurred when those pro players came into Clix's stream and started bullying and harassing him, and it was extremely unnecessary. Now, I think the funniest part was that eventually Psom, a 24-year-old pro player and the oldest player to qualify in the Fortnite World Cup for solos, actually came in the stream and started defending Clix and told these people to stop bullying and harassing him. Like, if this doesn't prove my maturity point, I don't know what does. Now, obviously, there are a ton of examples of this kind of stuff within the Fortnite community, but I don't want to talk about them all today. I think I've given enough evidence to prove my first point, so I want to move on to my second point. Now, this point does relate back to my first point, and it is that for many of these players, Fortnite is their first professional esport and the first time that they are in a professional environment. Obviously, due to the young age demographic, coupled with the fact that the competitive Fortnite scene is very new and is like only a year old, this means that for many people, Fortnite is their first esport. Because of this, I find that a lot of players don't quite understand the responsibilities they are given when they become a pro player. For most of these people, you're at home, you're at your own setup, you're with your family, your friends, in your own city. So I can understand that it's hard to then realize that you are still a professional and still should act in a professional way. If you are on an org or a clan or you are sponsored by a company, you are an extension of them and thus represent them. And I find that a lot of players don't understand this. Once you are in an org, have sponsors, or just have massive influence, you have to act in a certain way, because if you don't, it can have negative effects on your career. All of this success, money, and fame comes at a price, and that is that in some situations, you cannot act or say certain things that you would have or could have before. The perfect example of this would be the whole Blood X situation, where he was saying racist shit on Discord. He was signed to a big org, and once the racist DMs were leaked, the org dropped him and he lost everything. He represented the org, and what he said made the org look bad, and now he's suffering the consequences. He clearly didn't understand that signing with an org is a privilege, and with privilege came responsibility, and the responsibility to act professionally. Now, I know Blood X was in his mid to late 20s, but this could literally happen to anyone. As many of these professional players don't understand the responsibilities they have to themselves and others, they act in the same way they did before signing to an org or becoming well known. And a lot of the time, this tends to be in a very toxic way. Now, moving on to the last reason why I believe toxicity is rampant in the competitive Fortnite community is simply down to the fact that Epic Games completely neglects and doesn't care about what the community wants. At this point, I entirely understand, as Epic Games can be extremely frustrating to deal with, as they continue to add OP weapons or items into the game, as well as remove balanced and loved weapons and items from the game. The Fortnite meta is always changing. This can be very frustrating for pro players, as it is essentially like learning how to play a new game every month or so. The constant changes to the game breed toxicity within the community, as it causes a massive divide amongst the players, with some agreeing and some disagreeing with Epic's changes. This, coupled with the frustration that a lot of players feel towards Epic, can cause disagreements to lead to full-on arguments, beef, and Twitter wars. I completely understand the anger that these players feel, as Epic Games has clearly shown that they do not care about them at all. Although I believe that this last point is a massive reason for why the pro scene is so toxic, I can't blame them because of the way Epic has treated these pro players for the past year or so. So that about wraps up the video. Obviously, not every single professional Fortnite player is toxic, and a lot of them are amazing people and amazing players. But please let me know in the comment section down below whether you disagreed or agreed with me. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say and have a discussion with you guys. Leave a like on the video and subscribe with notifications on if you enjoyed. And with that being said, have a great day. Peace.